I'm Claire Dooley, you're watching CHG TV, and welcome to the Geoengineering Report, where we identify the threat in the skies. So let's talk about weather whiplash. Weather whiplash refers to the dramatic swings, often going from above average heat to snow. But the real question is, are these record high temperatures and sudden snowfalls a natural phenomenon? We look around and we hear some people screaming, "Oh, see, look, it's climate change." And then other people say, "Oh no, this has always been happening." And I think amidst the noise, it can be really disorienting. So we're going to talk to our expert today about climate engineering and chemical ice nucleation, which sounds like really big words. But I hope by the end of this episode, you will have a better understanding.
So the first question is about weather whiplash. It's happening in many areas, and California's had record heat this summer, but in late August, there was also snow. Was there snow in California in late August? Don't know that.
Yes.
What's going on?
Yes, correct. It's a very important question. And that weather temperature whiplash scenario is a direct result of what's known as chemical ice nucleation for weather modification. These are patented processes. These are endothermic reacting elements seeded into cloud moisture. Endothermic meaning energy absorbing. Most people know what an exothermic reaction is: an explosion from explosives, massive energy release. Endothermic is the opposite, energy absorption. So it's what you have, Polly, for those that have a first aid kit on their shelf somewhere in their cabinet with a cold pack in it that can sit there for 20 years at room temperature, and you mix those endothermic reacting elements together, you have an ice pack instantly. That's what we're talking about on an unimaginably massive scale. So when they seed this cloud moisture, they're trying to cause a flash surface cool down. They cause snow in the Sierras in August. Just happened. Same on Mount Shasta, Mount Lassen in Northern California. And when people see a headline like that, they instantly seem to forget about the last 3 months have been like living in hell here in Northern California. I mean, we've had, in my forested location on the east side of Lake Shasta, we've seen temperatures at 2 and 3 in the morning of 90 degrees recently. And now there's snow on the local mountains. It's completely insane. And this is a chemically nucleated material, and it tends to sublimate. And this is showing up in headlines too as well, Polly. Sublimation means that this frozen material, much of it converts from a solid to a gas and bypasses the liquid phase. And an extreme example of a chemically nucleated frozen material that people are familiar with is dry ice. No liquid comes off of dry ice, converts from a solid to a gas. So this chemically nucleated material to some degree does the same. And that's why we have now recent headlines also from Colorado and other places that they're not getting nearly as much runoff from the snow as they historically did since the year 2000. So again, all these dots connect. These are patented processes. We're testing the material. We know the chemically nucleating elements are in this material. So again, where is the meteorological community on this? Why aren't they acknowledging this? Because they're simply paid to cover it up. And we know this because we know power structure entities own organizations like Weather Channel, Weather Central, and they're simply tasked with covering the tracks of the climate engineers.
I just spoke to my brother who lives in England, and he said that he can feel the heat, but they cannot see the sun at all there. It's completely blocked. Mm-hmm. So it's a simple question, this, but how do you block the sun?
Well, again, we're talking about spectrums of UV radiation now that can penetrate that cloud cover. In fact, we're now experimenting with and seeing a penetration of radiant heat even through thin metal roofs. And this is extraordinarily alarming. This is indicating we're at a spectrum of UV that's approaching X-ray. And that is the final spectrum of UV radiation. So your listeners understand the UV radiation spectrum starts with UVA, then UVB, then UVC, then X-ray. We are told officially that 95% of incoming UV radiation is UVA, 5% UVB. We're told UVC stops 100,000 feet up in the atmosphere. That is not true now. We know this from our metering. A former NASA contract engineer that has been metering for geoengineeringwatch.org has detected extraordinary amounts of UVC on the surface. We also have our own meters that have detected the same. And this is not being acknowledged for obvious reasons. People would begin to panic. So we're being lied to across the board about the dangers that are unfolding from all quote official agencies who are in fact tasked with covering this up. Polly, the same comparison can be made in the medical industrial complex community, where we're still told today, in spite of all we know, that certain products are, quote, safe and effective when they're anything but. So that's how deep the deception goes. It's across the board.
And while they're manipulating the weather, they're also hurting us. I want to get that real clear to the people that say, well, I don't care. But they're hurting you as well, the viewers.
You're completely correct. With the plethora of toxic elements, we have aluminum, barium, strontium, manganese, surfactants, polymer fibers, graphene, and we know microplastics also. And your listeners, I encourage them to search these headlines. All human organs are now showing very alarming levels of microplastics, the brain included. In fact, the brain seems to be the worst of all. We now have recent reports stating that up to 0.5% of brain matter may be plastic nanoparticles that have infiltrated the blood-brain barrier and are building up in the brain, with an endless list of downstream consequences. And again, this is not our opinion. This is peer-reviewed science study, proven fact now that your listeners can easily search online, and we encourage them to do so. So when we know that climate engineering patents name polymer fibers as a primary element that are used to help keep the other toxic elements aloft in the air longer, with no consideration of the consequences to anything that lives, breathes. And why would we think, for those that say, well, they wouldn't do this to themselves, they already have. Again, I cite the nuclear blast detonations that have contaminated everything on the planet, nuclear power plant meltdowns now that are doing the same, and yet we're building 60 more nuke plants. Those at the very top, they don't care about the consequences of their actions, even to themselves. We're talking about a power addiction. So again, for those that claim they, aka those in power, those who print the money, and that's ultimately who's in power. The elections are nothing but scripted theater. They care about retaining their power and control, and whatever the consequences are in that process are not a consideration for them.
Let's talk about the update on blazing weather. Give us an update on this blazing weather and fires in the West. What's going on there? I mean, we're in Texas here. We haven't seen any rain for a month and it's boiling. What's going down?
Well, climate engineering completely derails the global hydrological cycle. The map we're looking at there is the NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, departure from normal high temperature map. So when you see that kind of contrast, they're planning a chemical cool down for the West because the West has been so hot for so long. And in this process, and while the rest of the country, in this case, goes to far above in record high temperatures, there's record highs every day, somewhere in the US and all over the world, record shattering highs, sometimes by 8 or 10 degrees. But they don't appear to have enough sway over the system, and they're losing control by the day to cool the entire country at once. So we see this flip-flopping, a broiling of the West while the East Coast is cooled down, and then it flips back and forth with this line down the middle of the country. This has been going on since about 2012. It's completely unnatural. There's not a meteorologist that can walk and chew gum that shouldn't know this is going on, Polly. I mean, they're simply lying or criminally ignorant of the very field in which we're told they're experts. It's one of the two. Take your pick. So the bottom line is we're all pretending, or we have a society and so-called experts pretending that this elephant in the equation isn't there when the effects are getting worse and worse. And that dark, the blue below normal temperatures we see across the West, as the moisture moves in from the West, which is where it moves in. That's again because of the Coriolis effect of the planet, the spin of the planet, the moisture moves from west to east across the US. So as they chemically nucleate this material, Polly, it dries up much or most of the moisture. So even though we get a surface cool down, we don't get much precipitation. And we have these days of featureless cloud canopy with almost nothing falling out. And then eventually some toxic drizzle starts to come down and might wet the surface, or we'll get an occasional downpour here and there. It's nothing like historical precipitation we had in this region. Nothing. In fact, to give an idea, where I live on the east side of Lake Shasta, normal annual rainfall in this forest was over 70 inches a year. That's a lot. In the last 12 plus years, we're down about 500 inches of rain. 500. Yes, we had the rain apocalypse a year and a half ago, which wasn't nearly as bad as they played it up, Polly, because they took measurements of rain over urban areas like Redding, normal annual rain of 33 inches a year, but they don't measure or disclose the orographically enhanced rain over the mountains, which are 3 and 4 times higher, and that's not happening. So we don't have the runoff, we don't have the total precipitation we should have. And again, across the board, they are lying about statistical everything, from how high the temperatures are to how bad the drought is. Everything at this point is manipulated, falsified data. It's much worse than anything that's being disclosed.
Feel free to contact us about any weather whiplash you're experiencing or any other strange phenomenons. Send us pictures of chemtrails and any questions you would like to ask Dane to goodmorning@CHD-TV. Thanks so much for watching the Geoengineering Report. We'll see you next time on CHD-TV.